This is the Ostba electric meat slicer. After spending some time with it, I thought it might be helpful to share what I've noticed so far. I mainly used it for slicing partially frozen beef, cooked meat, cheese, and bread. I wanted more consistent slices without having to work slowly with a kitchen knife. I was also curious about whether a 150-watt home slicer would be useful enough to justify the counter space. Setting it up was simple. I attached the food carriage, checked that the blade was locked in place, and placed the machine on a smooth countertop. The suction feet gripped the counter well. I still hold the machine steady during use, but I did not notice much sliding or shaking. The controls are easy to understand. There is a dial on the side for adjusting the thickness from about 0 to 15 millimeters. I can make thin slices for hot pot or move the dial to a thicker setting for sandwiches and bread. The markings are useful, but I still make one test slice before cutting the whole piece. The actual result can change a little depending on the food and how firmly I push it. The 7.5-inch stainless steel blade handled most of the food I normally prepare at home. Cooked ham and chilled roast beef came out fairly even. Semi-hard cheese was also easy to slice as long as the block fit on the carriage. Crusty bread worked better than I expected. It cut through the outside without crushing the soft center too much. Raw meat needed more preparation. When I tried meat that was soft and close to room temperature, it moved around and did not slice as cleanly. Chilling it until it was firm made a clear difference. For very thin hot pot slices, I put the meat in the freezer long enough for it to become firm, but not completely frozen. That gave me cleaner slices and made the meat easier to control. I would not use this machine for solid frozen meat, bones, or very hard food. The 150-watt motor is meant for normal home use. It has enough power for a reasonable amount of meal preparation, but it is not a commercial machine. I also give it a break during longer jobs rather than running it continuously. The food carriage has enough room for common cuts of meat, cheese blocks, and smaller bread loaves. Large or uneven pieces usually need to be trimmed before they fit properly. That adds a little preparation time, but it also helps the food sit flat and move across the blade more evenly. Using the food pusher matters. It gives me better control, and it keeps my hand farther away from the blade. I did notice that narrow pieces become harder to slice when I reach the end. I do not try to force the last small piece through. Saving a small leftover is better than getting my fingers too close to a moving blade. The child safety lock was one of the features I wanted to check carefully. The machine uses a two-step activation system, so it is harder to start by accident than a slicer with a basic power switch. I still unplug it as soon as I am done. The safety lock helps, but I do not treat it as a replacement for careful storage and supervision. Compared with a basic slicer I used before, this one feels more stable on a smooth counter. The thickness adjustment is also easier to control. Some small home slicers feel light enough to move while the carriage is sliding. This one weighs around 6 pounds, so it is still easy to move, but it does not feel overly loose during use. It is compact enough for a home kitchen, though I would not call it tiny. It needs space on both sides while I am cutting. I also place a plate or a shallow tray behind the carriage because the slices tend to fall there. Without a plate, meat and cheese can end up directly on the counter. The noise level is what I expected from a small electric slicer. It is clearly audible, but I did not find it unusually loud. The motor sound can change when I push dense food too quickly. When that happens, I slow down and let the blade do the work. Pushing harder does not improve the cut. The best results came from using steady pressure instead of trying to move the carriage fast. Thin slices take a little patience. If I rush, the thickness can vary, especially with softer food. After a few uses, I got a better sense of how much pressure to apply. Cleaning takes more time than washing a knife and cutting board. The blade, carriage tray, and food pusher can be removed, which makes the main food contact areas easier to reach. I unplug the machine before taking anything apart, and I handle the blade by the center area rather than touching the cutting edge. Grease and small food pieces can collect behind the blade near the drive section. That area needs to be wiped by hand. The removable parts make cleanup more manageable, but I would not describe the process as effortless. If I only need 2 or 3 slices, I usually use a knife. The slicer makes more sense when I am preparing a larger amount. One concern I had was whether the thickness dial would stay consistent. So far, it has held its position during normal use. Very thin settings still depend on the texture and temperature of the food. Firm, evenly shaped ingredients give much better results than soft or irregular pieces. Another concern was storage. The machine can fit under many kitchen cabinets, and it is light enough for me to move into a cupboard. The blade still needs to be treated carefully even when the machine is unplugged. I keep the thickness setting at 0 and store it where children cannot reach it. This slicer has been most useful when I prepare hot pot meat, sandwich fillings, cheese, bacon, or several portions at once. It saves me from trying to make dozens of even cuts by hand. It also gives me more control over thickness than buying only pre-sliced food. It is less useful for someone who only slices small amounts occasionally. Cleanup and storage may feel like too much work for a few pieces of food. It is also not the right choice for heavy daily production. I see it as a home kitchen tool for meal preparation, not equipment for continuous use. I like the adjustable thickness, the stable suction feet, and the removable parts. I also appreciate the extra step required to start the machine. The main downsides are the cleanup around the blade drive, the need for a receiving plate, and the fact that soft meat needs to be chilled for clean results. I would recommend it to someone who regularly prepares sliced meat, cheese, bread, or hot pot ingredients at home. I would skip it if counter space is very limited or if the plan is to cut hard frozen food in bones. Used for the right jobs, it has been practical and fairly easy to control. If you have any questions about the Ostba electric meat slicer, leave them in the comments. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more straightforward product reviews. Thank you for watching.